This week's activity has 4 parts to it. In part 1, I want you to make up a set of 10 exam scores, 10 two-digit numbers that have a positive skewness. And the 10 numbers can be whatever you want as long as they have a positive skewness. So just make sure to design your imaginary data set so that it has a positive skewness. And it's okay to have repeats as long as they're not all the same number. And also, you don't have to list them out in order. Um, just make sure that they have a positive skewness. And write out your 10 scores separated by commas. And in part 2, do the same thing. Make up another 10 exam scores and separate them by commas. But this time, design it so that it has a negative skewness. And in part 3, do the same thing, but make up 10 numbers with a positive kurtosis. And in part 4, make up 10 numbers with a negative kurtosis. So in parts 1 to 4, in each part, you're just making up an imaginary set of 10 exam scores separated by commas, and you're just designing it so that it has a certain type of shape. And in one of the latest videos I posted, I explain what these 4 shapes are: positive and negative skewness and positive and negative kurtosis. And if at a certain point in one of these 4 questions you feel unsure whether your 10 exam scores have the shape that I'm asking for, you could just make a histogram and check to see if it has the correct shape. And I also explained how to make a histogram in one of my latest videos. So, like I said, make up the 4 imaginary sets of exam scores. And this part 1 to 4 is just to give you practice with basically understanding what these different shapes are. And in part 5, take one of your 4 data sets from parts 1 to 4, 1, 2, 3, or 4, just one of them, and make a grouped frequency table of those 10 numbers. So in one of my latest videos, I explain what a grouped frequency table is. It has an X column and an F column, and the X column has all of the different decades that appeared in the data set. So so your decades might be, in your X column, might be 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and so on. And then on the right side, you have an F column, which shows the frequencies, which is the number of times that each decade appeared in the data. So what you have to do first is look at your data set and decide what is the lowest decade in my set of 10 numbers. And let's say that the lowest decade in your data set is the 50s. Well, then in your X column, the first interval would be 50 to 59. You would start there. And then after that, you would go 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and you would stop once you reach your highest decade. And then after your X column is finished, then what you do is you count the number of numbers. You count the number of times that each of your decade appears in your data set. So let's say your data set has 250s. Well, then the X column would say 50 to 59, and the F would be 250, 2 numbers in the 50s. Then let's say your data set has 4 numbers in the 60s. Well, then in the X column, you'd have 60 to 69, and the F would be 4, just meaning 4 60s. And then finish your grouped frequency table. And once you finish your grouped frequency table, turn it into a grouped histogram, which I also explain in one of my latest videos. So to make a grouped histogram, you just take your table and put it in bar chart form. You turn it into basically a bar graph, but it's technically called a grouped histogram, but it's really just a type of bar graph. And when I say use a class width of 10, I'm just telling you to use decades for class intervals like 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79. That is the class width of 10. If I told you to use a class width of something else like 20, it would no longer be decades. But yeah, that's all you have to do for this activity. And each time you make up one of your data sets in parts 1 to 4, you just have to think about Well, how many numbers should I have from the low end, and how many numbers should I have from the high end? If I ask for a positive skewness, um, that means that you should have more numbers at the low end and then fewer and fewer toward the high end so that you get that shape that peaks at the left and trails off toward the right. So just think about, yeah, in parts 1 and 2, think about that. And then when you get to positive kurtosis, remember that a positive kurtosis is when a lot of numbers are in one narrow area, which gives it a really tall bar, and there's very few numbers outside of that narrow range. So you have to keep that in mind. And yeah, and also refer back to my video. Refer back to the videos I just posted for this week on frequency tables. That should help you a lot with this activity. And just let me know if you have any questions. And for this week's activity, type, um, well, there's one of two things you could do. You could type your answers in here and upload this document, but then you would need to find a way to insert a table and a bar graph, I'm sorry, a group histogram into your assignment. If you can do that, that's fine. Or you can do this on your own paper and just make sure that it's organized and upload a picture of it.